What the?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Data Revolution podcast. Today, my guest is Jason La Greca, who's an old friend from Microsoft and who's now working in the higher ed sector. And we wanted to have a chat today about data, AI, and with a higher education. So welcome, Jason.
Well, thank you, Kate. Thank you for having me. And it's so great to talk to you. I mean, time flies, and we've had some amazing conversations in the past, but my lordy, the world has changed.
I think the last time we were talking in any depth, it was early on in COVID, and it was sort of just as generative AI was starting to become a thing. So we haven't really had much contact since then. So the world has changed, and you've moved on from Microsoft, obviously, and you've moved into higher ed.
Yeah.
So what sort of things are on your mind in that world?
So for me, some of the main things that are on my mind, there's quite a few. I'm working deeply in higher ed and seeing the inertia of the sector being what it is. It's a fairly slow moving sector in all areas. I mean, my big concern is that it's really not, or we're not meeting the needs of employers, and we're definitely not meeting the needs of our students who are going into a world that's very, very different, and the outcomes that employers expect and the sorts of skills that employers will expect are very different to what we have in our curriculums.
So it sort of goes back to the very purpose of why a university exists.
Mm.
And I think that back in the Hawke era, when they split the institutes of advanced education and pushed them into the universities, I don't think they did them any favors, because I wonder if a university might be better placed to educate people, not for jobs. And College of Advanced Education might be a better place to educate people for the workforce, or TAFE, or technical and further education. And I think we've kind of done ourselves a bit of a disfavor by aggregating it all.
Quite possibly. I mean, I think universities certainly have a place, but I think that place needs to go back to its Socratic roots.
Mm.
Genuinely, and every time I'm on
Which
campus,
actually then makes AI unnecessary and not a problem.
well, absolutely. Like if you're bringing humans from different areas of interest and different areas of expertise together, I mean, that is literally, I mean, obviously you're from UNSW, the square, right? Like that was designed with intent, like to bring people together from different areas to come and talk about problems and the big things that we face as humanity. And I think that's where universities need to go back. And I think ultimately it comes down to at least providing safe places to explore accountability, like giving them real decisions that have impact, and a safe place and mentorship around some of those decision making skills. I think definitely learning how to judgment, I think, will be an increasingly important skill or capability moving forward, and then learning how to differentiate between good and excellent. So taste, I think they're the three things to me that I think universities can certainly help students with, and they did historically. And the more and more we go down the rabbit hole, and I have these conversations every day, the more and more we go down the rabbit hole of, it's all about content, and, we need to figure out secure assessment and all of these things. Like, I don't think you see the point. I don't think you see the opportunity that's in front of us, nor do I think you're going to survive for the next 5 years if you keep going down that path, because students won't see the return on investment.
If everything's just content, then AI is the answer.
Precisely.
And so they're not thinking, I don't think higher ed's really thought about what are they going to use AI for that won't do them out of a job.
Yeah. Or how can they be the intellectual substrate that supports large language models, right? Universities are centers of excellence with research and, primary and secondary data collection. They have, I think if you looked at the average university, the biggest data consumers, the biggest compute consumers are actually the research centers, not learning and teaching. So they have access to amazing stuff that, if you de-identify things and you did everything else that you could do to make it, any sensitive information not available to the outside world. But if you expose that in a way that LLMs could plug into, you could massively improve their outputs, right?
I think it's probably worthwhile just for the people that are listening to explain how a university is basically structured. So, they have a CEO. In
Hmm.
Australia, that's typically someone called a vice chancellor,
Yep.
who we will henceforth refer to as a VC, and we're not talking about a venture capitalist, we're talking about a vice chancellor, the CEO of the university. And then they basically have three bits of their operations. They have the administration, which is the running of the organization as a business.
Yep.
Then there's learning and teaching, which is the teaching of people, typically undergraduate and postgraduate coursework students.
Hmm.
And then there is research, which is teaching higher degree research students. So that's masters by research and PhDs,
PhD. Yep.
and actual researchers. And typically the people who work in the academic space are both teachers and researchers in most universities in Australia. So that's the context that we're
Context. Yeah.
talking about. And thinking about, like, I've done a lot of work with research. I actually came into UNSW as the IT manager for the engineering faculty. So I was
Wow.
running
Yeah.
all of their high performance compute and stuff. And I can remember when I walked down the corridor, in one building, and I was just trying to get a sense of how much data there was in the research space. And by the time I got to the third office, I was up to exabytes and I couldn't do the math
Yeah.
in my head anymore.
Hmm.
There was just so much data.
Incredible. It's incredible. And it often just sits there unused. Like nobody knows how to take advantage of this amazing, like they'll finish their research project, and for various reasons they need to retain that data. But surely there are ways that pay to play. Like I'm not saying universities should be giving away everything for free because ultimately they are a business and they, as much as I would love to see that, the reality says no. But I think there are ways that universities can basically excel in the modern economy in the agentic AI world by at least finding parts of its data set to make available externally via, there's lots of different ways that you could do it from a technology stack
Well,
perspective. But
there's already a lot of work in doing that. And nowadays, with a lot of the publications, you need to publish your underlying
mhm,
data. So that's something that's already
yeah,
kind of happening in the research space. And there's also a lot of work at UNSW. It's usually driven by Luke Better
yep,
Matabay, who's an amazing bloke. And, he's been working with all the other research unis in Australia for a long time, trying to look at these problems and also to look at how they can use their data. Also, what they need to keep. So, do you need to keep the actual underlying raw data that you collected, which, sometimes will be soil samples
yeah.
or something? Do you keep the various permutations that you've done compute on, or do you just keep the outputs? And then how do you then validate that? Like, do
Mm.
you keep a copy of the tools that you used on the day? All of these there's all of these big problems in research compute, because that, when you talk about making research data available, it's which bit of that data and then how would anyone know it exists?
Well, that's it. I mean, they're all very, very big and real problems. I just think starting with what is the most useful for businesses in particular, like what would be the most useful outputs from a university that we have access to inside our silos that could accelerate the economy or could at least make the tools, the AI tools, a little bit more intelligent than they currently are. We're grounding them in actual theory versus Reddit, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Reddit, but it's not necessarily the greatest source of truth when it comes to facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of research happening now that is using AI, and a lot of it's using off commercial off the shelf
Mm,
products, but they're training their own custom models.
correct.
And there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening in the research space. I actually think research is kind of more okay than learning and teaching.
It's fascinating to watch. Yeah, we see it. We see it a lot here at UTS, where the researchers are well and truly like they're using Cursor and their teams to build, solutions and tools themselves, and they're really excited and they've got lots of great ideas, but doesn't quite make it to learning and teaching, unfortunately.
Well, the part of the problem with learning and teaching is kind of how it's structured. Oh, full disclosure, I am a PhD candidate at UTS, also doing my PhD on AI.
Mm,
and governance and innovation policy and how it's helping entrepreneurship. So that's a really interesting challenge though in learning and teaching, because I can remember for like the last couple of years at UNSW, like the last 5 years,
Mm,
we've been having conversations in the learning and teaching space about what is AI, how can we use it. I know at UNSW where I still teach, they they've bought licenses to various things and stuff in the learning and teaching space, but I really don't feel like, and I don't think they've done it at UTS, so I'm assuming they haven't done it anywhere, is start to grapple with the real problem for me, which is what bit of knowledge do we need to pass on to the next generation? And how do we validate that they know that?
mm.
And what is meaningful in that context?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Again, I always bring it back to those three core capabilities of how do you teach people to make good judgments with data that may not be complete, right?
Mm.
Because you can do anything with AI. Like I've proven time and time again, and I've shown very senior leaders that with a single prompt, I can finish a course inside of Canvas and get exactly 86.25% on all the assessments, right? Regardless of what it is. Like even OCR images, like you've got images, like point the parts of the body and name them, or it'll do it,
Yeah.
right? Like
Computer it works.
autonomously, like it'll control the browser, it'll do everything. So the whole concept of using a learning management system as your source of truth or your content repository system is dead. What I think, because sure we can teach students how to use the tools are evolving so quickly that that will be very difficult to do at
Yeah,
scale.
and I don't think, anybody wants to be a
No,
student that's certified in Claude, because next week Claude's not
it's
the flavor of the month,
it's not exactly.
I use.
No, which exactly right. Like the model, it almost, it's pointless even thinking about teaching those skills, but teaching
So
people how to, you know,
how to approach it,
how to approach it,
how to
right?
think about it, how to think about, because the thing that I talk about in my AI for Innovation course at AGSM is how do you think about AI as a tool
Hmm.
in an innovation context?
Yeah.
And how do you, and then the tool will keep evolving. The tools are, there's new tools all the time. But how do you approach that as an organization? How do you set up an innovation practice that can use AI tools?
Yeah. And how do you use an AI tool? Or how do you, as the human in the loop, take the output of AI and decide whether or not it's good or it's, like I always say, excellent, right? So, how do you build the skills through, I'm a strong believer in the arts and understanding, that there's so much that the human brings to that conversation that you can prompt and you can transform whatever the output is from AI into something that is truly excellent. It's about teaching that delta, right? Like, how do you understand the yeah, there's a lot to cover, but for me, it all comes down to understanding taste and exposing students to so many different aspects of humanity that allows them to make good decisions to drive AI, whatever it is, right? And then how do you make good decisions? AI will give you 1,000 options. Like if you asked it tomorrow to come up with 50 business proposals for 50 different ideas, that's great, but it actually doesn't have any skin in the game. You, as the human, needs to validate and decide which of those is the best and then be accountable for that decision.
And
And if
and I think that's the thing that we always talk about in responsible AI when we're talking about
hmm,
it, is human judgment needs
human
to be
judgment,
really in the mix with it.
how do you make a good decision? And I mean, it's not really something you can teach in a lecture, right? It comes through experience, it comes through stuffing up, and it comes from learning and having time to
But
synthesize.
you can teach frameworks. So, a lot of what you're kind of talking about is a lot of the kind of stuff that gets taught in a traditional management degree.
Yeah,
It's tools and techniques to help you do that when you don't already know it.
yeah.
Um, like, and maybe it can be, the savior of the modern MBA.
You know what? I totally agree with you on that, for a couple of reasons. The traditional MBA, because it's teaching people about high pressure decision making, understanding human psychology, understanding all of those different things to be a business leader, I think it'll be really, really important. The other thing that excites me about MBA programs, particularly exec MBA programs, It brings people from lots of different backgrounds together, often and ideally in a physical space, to share ideas, to brainstorm, to argue. Eh, That they're like the perfect model of what a Socratic university should be. And I think we need to replicate that model more and more
Well,
with mentorship, right?
it's really funny that you say that, because one of the things that I argued long and hard at UNSW was what is our differentiator if everybody can do the content? Like, everybody in the world
Mhm.
has an Accounting 101 course that's largely the
Yeah.
same. And it's the same for most knowledge domains. What do we bring to the table that's different? And it's typically a physical experience on campus,
Yep.
it's the cohort, and
Mhm.
it's the teachers.
Yep.
So the experienced teachers, and that is the special sauce that we have as an institution. And that's what differentiates us from, somebody who's got all the content.
Yeah. People experience place, right?
Yeah.
They're the when you talk to anybody about going to university, you know, you would if you were to survey students, I guarantee they would say, I want to go to make university to make friends. I want to build a network and I want to be able to walk out and have a job. Right. So real experiences and practical skills that I walk out into the workplace and I can get a job. I don't think we're hitting most of those particularly post COVID. Like I think we're really struggling on all three fronts, and I think students know that, and we will
Well, the
struggle.
thing that we're kind of facing at the moment is the challenge that the students are coming out with. Their skills kind of don't even matter
Hmm,
because those entry level jobs have disappeared.
possibly,
So, but one of the interesting things that I remember when I was talking to my engineering students a couple of years ago, a lot of them didn't see a job as their future. They really saw entrepreneurship as
yeah,
their future.
totally agree.
And so they were involved in the accelerator on campus and were doing stuff with that because they could already start to see that the traditional career path that you would have was kind of disappearing.
Yeah, I totally agree with them. I think it's wise to be thinking about your own opportunity. I wish I had have done it sooner. To be totally honest, think entrepreneurial studies and understanding how to grow an audience, how to do those sorts of things will be really, really important moving forward. And it should be baked into pretty much whatever we do.
Mm.
But the idea that engineers won't have a job in like a traditional sense,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
the engineers are probably one of the least
least
problems.
impacted, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Information workers,
Every country needs 10,000 engineers on any given day.
absolutely. And I mean, you and I both know there's lots of different types of engineer as well. But if you think you're going into a job to become like a coder, someone that's going to be like a low level
Yeah, no.
program, it's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, I'm just, they call it vibe coding, but it's
Mhm.
real.
Yeah, I do
I'm
it all the
going to
time.
do another episode on it pretty soon. But
I'm going to live stream. I'm actually tonight recording myself live streaming, vibe coding something, and playing a video game at the same
oh,
time.
great! I'll link to that when I do my episode. So that would be cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's it's real, but I think if you graduate, it's. I think it'll be increasingly important to understand the architecture on how you build robust software and security practices. I think there still will be experts in that space, but I think increasingly if you position yourself as someone that can make a good judgment on what good looks like and have that fundamental
Yeah,
accountability, you will do
so
well.
this is part of the challenge for universities. How do we tell undergraduates who are quite young people
Hmm.
um, how to do that?
I think well, it's difficult. The explanation that I'm giving to my children, and my son is going into university not next year, the year after. I'm telling them to focus on the arts, focus on truly human capabilities, focus on people skills,
Mm.
communication, collaboration, and I'm telling them very, very heavily to focus on entrepreneurship. So, even if you're a musician, you need to focus on what a business looks like, how to build a business, how to build an audience, how to understand how finance works. As much as I pretend I don't know accounting, I have to, right? So I think we need to help our students through our curriculum, explicitly training them on those things, or at least giving them a broader, I know you're from this area as well, like the transdisciplinary school to me is like one of the most important things that we have at UTS. Like it's the fact that we can bring so
I
many of
know
these.
they were going
No, 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 no. It
to.
needs to, it's intentional. It should. absolutely be a standalone piece that brings different people together
They
and brings
finally
those lived
acknowledged that.
experiences.
Just for listeners, that they were going to merge the transdisciplinary school in with law and business, and they're going to keep its identity as a separate school, because it is a great thing, and it's one of the reasons I chose UTS, because they bring people together in that
Mhm.
transdisciplinary environment, which I think is where all the magic happens.
I actually think that's the model that universities need to pivot to. I think, yes, you're doing an engineering degree. Yes, you're doing a maths degree, but really, you also need to have exposure to other areas of humanity. And I think that will make you more rounded. I think the generalist will succeed and be, probably the more, profitable way to be in the future. Like someone that can do a little bit of everything is probably going to be better off than someone that's an ultra specialist in one subject area. And I think, yeah, schools like that are, or should be, the focus moving forward, and more agile curriculum to keep up with changes. Because right now, it's like, let's be honest, the speed at which we
It's
can,
really hard.
are we still, it's
There was
hard.
one time when it took 5 years
uh,
to get a new degree
yeah, it doesn't shock
through.
me.
I can remember it because it was like I was counting the anniversaries every year, and it was like, oh my God.
We almost need a living curriculum, like
Well, they
real
they
time.
they managed to get a bunch of online stuff through really fast during COVID, which is where
Hmm.
they started to realize, hey, this doesn't have to be forever.
Sorry.
It disappeared
I
from
kicked
the
the cable.
great. You're back. Yeah, yeah. So COVID was really helpful. So I did my master's thesis on the state of digital transformation in higher
Mm.
education in Australia in 2019. So I
Ooh,
finished it
timing.
just before COVID, and there was no digital transformation in higher education. And then COVID hit, and I had a couple of colleagues who told me before I went on leave in January, were like, "Oh yeah, we can never go online. We're a
Mm.
special and different in engineering." And when I came back, COVID had hit, everybody had been sent home, and their course was suddenly online. It was so funny.
And they're calling me at Microsoft to help them.
Yeah, yeah, well, so everybody was. I remember those days. I remember the Teams team in Redmond going, oh my God, they were
Yeah,
working 24/7.
it was intense, and it was a really interesting learning curve for the audience. Like, for context, I was part of the team's engineering team during COVID, and again, sort of changing topics, Kate, I apologize, but we learnt things like, as a
Scaling,
teacher, yeah, yeah,
scaling globally overnight.
well, yeah, like Teams was never designed for education initially. Like that was never its intent. Like the idea of having a meeting to run a class was just so out there that nobody ever thought it was going to be a reality. But when COVID hit, it was the lowest friction to go to Teams because everyone was already using M365 in many of the districts and schools around the world. And teachers started teaching, and then they realized, oh, wait a minute, I can't mute my students. Oh, wait a minute, I can't turn the camera off for my students. Wait a minute, I can't. And just I would like students to raise their hands and do things. And we learned a lot from that.
You guys were churning out change requests almost overnight,
Constantly.
because there was some that I put through amongst many people that were
Mm.
asking for those features that literally came out in a week. It's
Yeah.
pretty impressive. But I think the scaling story is really interesting.
So when
Yeah.
I started,
So we should have a separate chat about that, because
yeah.
it'll tie in with my Microsoft story that I did recently.
Yeah, we should. Like, I can tell you what it was like going from a team that had maybe 200,000 users to, over 20 million per month. Like, it was incredible. And just I'm actually releasing a book, which will talk a lot about my experiences at Microsoft and some of the people that were there. And yeah, I won't say it was fun. It was actually a pretty dark, Microsoft was great, but that part of our lives was pretty
Really.
dark. But geez, we learned a lot.
Yeah. And it was really great working with David Kellerman, because
Yeah.
he'd already been a trailblazer with teams in education
Yeah.
pre-COVID. So he was able to help a lot of people to
Oh, for
get
sure.
their heads around how you might do. And that's one of the really interesting things for me, is you've got these people in higher ed who are doing amazing things with teaching using technology and AI, and then the learning establishment in the organizations, in the institutions, really doesn't want a bar of what they're doing.
or the IT establishment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a careful what I say, but there are two sides to that equation, right? Like I think there are people in learning and teaching that would love to explore all sorts of things, and I think there are people in IT that would love to explore all sorts of different things. But our governance and our procurement and our strategy and all sorts of things kind of hamstrung, and that's true for every university I've ever worked for.
Well, me too. So, I've been working at 3 universities now, and IT is just so dire at all of them. And in my day job, IT is so helpful.
Mm.
My God, it's astonishing the difference.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah.
I think within higher education, and this is true not just for higher education, this is true for almost every sector I've ever been a part of. But for the longest time, for over a decade now, everyone's outsourced their capability. Like, let's be honest, we've sassified our entire stack.
Mm.
We've used contractors and or, big four to do all of our main consultancy work and understanding and thinking. So really the people that are left are the ones that just do the BAU, keep the lights on stuff. And
Mm.
they've never really been empowered to think of anything beyond that. So you've got this massive void in IT globally where the average person is just doing pretty mundane procurement type work and not actually doing anything enlightening. And it's very difficult to shift that inertia because the rules of SaaS first and, we go to market for things that is very difficult to change because it's written in
Mm.
the rules. It needs to change because the math doesn't math anymore. It genuinely, like from an accounting standpoint, it's actually much, much
Also,
cheaper.
you've got the integration problem,
Yeah.
and typically in higher ed, integration is not very good.
No.
Integration is a capability they don't typically have, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these SaaS apps, and then you really want to integrate the data, and there isn't much IT support for that.
Yeah, if you try
And
to
it's really
abstract the
problematic.
data into your own, data estate, it's very difficult to do that if you've sassified things.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's doable, but if you're running on dinosaur platforms that are SaaS or actually just VMs in the cloud, it's almost impossible to pull out what you need when you need it in a timely manner.
Yeah. So, but this is actually a problem with a lot of large corporates. So I think it's an endemic thing with
Mhm.
large institutions and organizations where they've outsourced so much of their brains, and they just, like you said, you rely on the consultants. You're not doing your
Yep.
own thinking.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's in, I mean, the book behind me, Capable Organization's all about it. The idea is that we need to change that model. Yeah, and there's a real opportunity, and I think it'll be a differentiator in the market if you can bring those skills back in house and use AI to accelerate growth and accelerate, moving off that $200,000 a year crappy SaaS platform that, you know, only does what it does because it has to appease 40 customers, right? You can do it yourself now with like almost no
And
cost.
that's, I think, the interesting thing. So we're about to talk about agentic AI
Yeah,
because that's the real game changer now. That wasn't a thing when everybody went out and bought all those SaaS platforms.
exactly.
But now you can just, in your bubble, if you're in an Amazon, Google, or
Hmm.
Microsoft bubble, you can just consume from their marketplace
Yep.
different platforms without needing to do any additional procurement. And if you've got the people that know how to prompt these things and you've got your business processes mapped and you can pop them in there, you can literally automate all of your processes.
Yeah.
And that used to be hard. That was called business process management in the past. You had to buy specific platforms and you'd had to hard code everything
Yeah.
with
So I'll give you a
decision
classic
trees.
example, right? Like something that just drives me up the wall is that we still have people in organizations all over the world spending hundreds of hours per employee at times documenting their processes into a tool that's like a flowchart
Mm.
generator, right? Insane. Like just interview the person, the SME on how they do the process, maybe get them to screen record, let AI document that. It will produce all of the workflows, everything else that you needed to do, and it'll keep it up to date,
Yeah.
right? Like it's insane. Like every process that you can think, that's a very meta example, like a process of a process creation. But there are so many things that you can do that can just get
So
freedom for your people.
I really think this is really interesting because I think this is leading us to people don't know what they can use AI for.
Mm,
There's all this really cool stuff that is inherent in the product. And in my Microsoft episode, I was talking about how they're really clever with their co-pilots because they want to augment the people.
yeah.
And they've already, they've kind of already got us because they've got Office. So that was a very canny play on their part. The tools are leapfrogging so fast because I looked at Microsoft 365 Copilot 2 years ago,
Mm,
and I was unimpressed. And I looked at it again May last year, and I was like, oh my God, it's evolved so fast.
yep.
And we're rolling it out in my day job now,
Mm,
and it actually does a pretty good job. And that's sort of evolved in what would have taken decades years ago.
yeah, absolutely. Most of the most agile development houses on the planet, Microsoft inclusive, would be using their own agents to help them expedite
Oh,
development,
they are.
right?
And like I was
So,
just having a chat with Salesforce, and
yeah,
they said 2/3 of something that they built was built by agentic engineers.
yeah, absolutely. Like, if you look at like Cursor, which is the IDE that I use, the integrated development environment for listeners, is used by so many of the names that you would hear every day. Like Stripe, for example, all of their code is done. Like Cursor itself is done in Cursor.
Hmm.
It's modern development, and it will get faster and faster and better and better. I think there are legitimate concerns around security, privacy,
Oh
and
my God.
that sort of stuff. But there are ways that you can appropriately scaffold that. Make sure that you're doing even more robust penetration testing and other types of testing. Make sure that you're accessible. There are ways that you can build that into the agentic flow that beyond the scope of this conversation, but it is entirely doable, and those proper
But
dev
this,
houses
this,
do it every
this,
day.
this literally goes to your processes.
Yeah.
If you integrate it into your workflow processes so that you can't move to production
Hmm.
without hardening,
Exactly.
and you've got human code review and all of that stuff. And one of the things that always irritates me when I go into organizations when they have code reviews and they don't have a standardized process.
Yeah. No.
So you're getting a random dude, usually it's a dude, doing a code review how they feel, and the next day another one's doing it differently.
Hmm.
You've got literally no standardization that you can enforce that.
There's no standardization of test plans. There's nothing,
Yeah.
right? So AI can actually standardize that for you and do a better job of documentation, and then enforce human in the loop to say you need to confirm and be accountable for this
Hmm.
as part of the process before it gets pushed to GitHub or goes through your pipelines, right? Like, it's all of this is totally doable and controllable to a very granular level. It's just capability. People don't know how to do it. And to your original
Well, a
point,
lot of people don't even know that you should want to do this.
hmm, oh, and that'll change because they will lose out to competitors who do. I talk to a lot of folks from a lot of different industries, and I'm asking them a basic question like, what percent of your day are you using AI? Like, of all the things that you do, what percent? And on average, you hear like maybe 2 to 10%.
Hmm.
Like, if it's not close to 100%, you're doing something wrong.
But I think that's the capability gap that we've got. We've got a
Correct.
knowledge and capability gap where people don't know the things that AI can do now,
Hmm.
do not understand the business problems you can apply it to, and then don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost impossible to answer that. I like to refer to it as my second brain. Anything that I can do cognitively, I can outsource that now.
Hmm. Yeah, I've got a friend who's a futurist, and he reckons that AI can do his job now.
Oh, you could do my job. You could totally do my job. Not the entrepreneurial side, but definitely my product management sort of hat of taking at least what I do here, very basic requirements and procurement type activities. Yeah, you could automate that process 100%. The real thinking, that human creativity, that's the bit where I think we add value now. Understanding what excellent should be and what it should look like based on all sorts of different sources, understanding that you need to decide which is the best way to approach something, and being accountable for whatever decision that you make at the end of the day. They're the things that I think will be super valuable. Yeah, but most jobs, I think, if you think through your process and what you do day to day, you could at least automate part of it.
Well, that sort of leads me to think right back to what we were talking about right at the start of universities.
Mm.
Because when I did my thesis in 2019, I reviewed every Australian university strategy,
Hmm.
and they were all the same.
Yeah.
I do not. I think they all hired different consultants to write them, but they were
Did
the
they? Yeah.
same.
Did they though? And those consultants just called each other because they've all worked together before. But hey, remember that one you did for University of Melbourne? Do you mind just sharing that with me? Yeah. Copy. Find replace name of university. Right
Yeah,
now you could.
and sometimes they even fail to replace. Like you get a different university popping up.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so
It-
funny when that
It's
happens.
it's funny because it's true. I mean, just to give people a classic example of something that you could go away and automate today. You can ask Claude Copilot, whatever AI flavor you want to use. I
Of your
use
choice.
Claude because that's my thing. Go and ask it to look through all of the RSS feeds that are out there on the world about artificial intelligence or technology. There are thousands of blog posts that are posted every single day. Go and aggregate those behind the scenes and then give you a one-page summary of everything on a 24-hour cron job, right? And I do that every morning. I get a digest of everything that's happened overnight across areas that I'm interested in. It's not just technology, but other stuff. It puts it in language that I understand because, sometimes I like to be spoken to like I'm 10,
Yeah.
and it does it for me, right? And that is a massive time saver for me. It just means I don't need to spend half an hour trying to find and read through different news sites. I can just download it to my brain.
But see, these are all the things that are just like the baseline level
Hmm.
things that people can do right now.
Yep.
And this is one of the things I'm encouraging people when they do my AI for innovation course. Like, hey, go use these tools. Like they're all managers, they're all managing,
Yeah.
and they're like, I'm like, do you use them? Oh, yeah, I use ChatGPT at home, but no, you need to use it in your work.
Use it for everything.
Like
As long
whatever
as you're
you're
not
allowed to use.
uploading sensitive information and what, like, 'cause I've heard some dang horror stories. But, if you're doing things in a way that's appropriate and you're asking it valid questions, and again, thinking of chat as the only mode of, communicating and working with AI is actually incorrect. Like it's what happens behind the scenes. It's not just, prompting. There's so much more that you can orchestrate. And I think it's, again, it comes down to capability, right? And giving people the opportunity and the time to really think through what they do and what they could be doing better and more efficiently with AI.
So one of the problems in higher education is everybody's so busy running just to keep up, they don't really have the bandwidth
There's
to
so much
learn
busy
those
work.
things.
There's so much busy work.
So what we did a big in my day job, we did a big project last year. It went live in October, and we had this initiative called Clear the Runway. You have permission to stop doing anything at all to focus on this important project for the business. And people were going, oh no, that needs to keep happening.
Mm,
We were like looking, and it was so much stuff that was really just busy work. It was really interesting. And they had the blessing of the entire leadership team to say no to that.
yeah.
And they very often continue to prioritize it.
Yeah.
It was
And
really interesting.
you'd be amazed at how much you can just stop doing and nobody cares. Like, people that I work with know this. I don't read email. Like, unless you ping me on Teams and try to get my attention, like, there are times when, yeah, sure, it's an external someone that they can only contact via email. That's fine. But unless they contact me via Teams or someone makes me, you know, mentions me, I just won't even look at it. And you know what? I've had zero complaints.
Oh, well, I've just got a prompt. I've got a scheduled prompt. Runs every Monday, and
Hmm.
it goes through my emails and tells me who I owe stuff to,
Yeah.
and drafts me responses and tells me the key points.
Yep. Just distills it
Delightful.
down. Yeah. So I do that with my personal. I have a cron that runs every 2 hours. It gives me a Telegram notification, say you need to action this, and this, or there's nothing, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, for my work stuff, we're a little bit more restricted than I wish I was.
Oh, well, I just use Copilot, but
Mm.
it's saving me because I used to have all these tags and stuff. And I'd have to go through them and look at them, and now it just gives me this lovely little summary of these are all things I need to do.
Yeah. And it means the whole idea of needing a nice, clean folder structure, all of those things that we used to spend so much time doing, naming conventions, all of that stuff is kind of dead now, right? Because it's all based off the metadata behind those files and the contents of those files and everything else. So
Well,
it's,
I think we're moving into the world where we need to be clear about the distinction between structured data and unstructured
mm,
data. The unstructured data we don't care about now, and that's really great. It's really good. The structured data, it's structured for a reason, and that's also good.
mhm,
It's joining them up where you get all the really interesting insights.
absolutely. Yeah. It's exciting. And I think this year it'll be interesting just
Yes, we
from, well, yeah. So yeah, just overnight, the stock market and everything else took a nice little tumble based on Microsoft's earnings call, right? So it's we're getting into the highest part of the greed cycle, so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what
well,
happens in the
look,
next.
the AI data center bubble has to pop
Oh, the
eventually.
maths! Like, just think of the maths, Kate. Like, if any one of those big companies misses their quarterly earnings by a decent amount because they'd predicted revenue, they're sitting on trillions of dollars of infrastructure
And
that sits there collecting dust.
it's a lot of them have put it off the books. So
Yeah.
it's the same as the 2008 off the books.
Oh, they keep shuffling money around between one
Yeah.
another. Yep. That's a conversation for another day. We can go deep rabbit hole conspiracy theory type stuff.
Well, so the interesting thing for me is higher ed doesn't understand why it's special, and I think they're transfixed with AI as a shiny new thing.
Hmm.
And I don't think that they're thinking about it in the context of what's our mission and how do we differentiate and how do we
Yep.
make money? Because most universities in Australia make money by teaching undergraduate students and postgraduate students, so
Yep.
coursework students. That's how they make all their money. Research doesn't make them money. Everybody thinks it does. So that's their business. So they need to prioritize that. And I think there's a real crisis starting to emerge because if the students are using AI to write their assignments and the teachers are using AI to write the questions,
And answer them up.
what's the point of that assessment?
The zero. Zero. There is 0 point to that assessment, which is why universities need to go back, as you said, to their mission and to their roots, which to me is that real human connection, bringing people together into a physical space to, I don't know, something really novel like talk with one another.
Well, I hated group assignments when I was doing my master's in business.
Hmm.
But, I'm still mates with a lot of the people I was in those groups with, and it's a decade
Yeah,
later.
me too.
And it was a really good learning experience. So, yes, I didn't like it, but it was good for me.
Yeah. It is sometimes or often that, discomfort is what actually helps us grow, right? Yeah, I hate marking group assignments. I'll be really honest with you. Like, I find them very difficult to mark.
But I
But
love them in comparison to individual
it
assignments when I'm
depends on the
marking.
individual assignment, though. But yeah, I agree. But having students come together and then reflect on what they've learnt and the decisions that they've had to make, the judgments, making them own those
So
decisions.
you're really arguing for changing what we're assessing from the content
Hmm.
to the behavior,
Correct.
which is a really important distinction and one really worth going into a bit.
Mm.
Why are you arguing for that? I know why you're arguing, but let's
Mm.
ask the question. Why are you arguing for that?
Well, for me, it's got the output ultimately doesn't mean anything. In a world where AI can basically create whatever asset those students are going to create, that meaningless. But the thought and the connection and having to be put into a group of individuals that have different lived experiences and ideas helps you grow as an individual. And being able to demonstrate what you've learned from that, or at least articulate or synthesize what you've learned from that experience, to me is far, at least from my own experience, far more useful and far more beneficial to me being a capable human in a world where you know, the cognitive functions are no longer relevant, like being able to produce an essay is irrelevant, if that makes sense. It's
Oh,
about,
but I think that's it. And also with that approach to it, I think it's a really interesting approach because then the existence of AI doesn't matter.
No,
It's really about forming people
yeah,
who,
making capable humans
yeah, who can do that.
who can be compassionate, who can reason with one another, who can argue and debate and do so in a in a way that's I don't know, reasonable and considered, able to bring in data and information to help them with their arguments with one another. That's what universities are supposed to do, but I just don't see it. We're so focused on essays and crappy submissions of things that teachers don't even really pay a lot of attention to when they mark.
Well, I think the real challenge in the teaching bit of universities is the level of marking, and especially now that
Mm.
they've shortened the term, and so they're really short terms, and you've got marking, and a lot of universities, have not just semesters anymore, have trimesters
Yeah.
and stuff. So they're really short terms, and then you're marking, and then you're teaching again, so you don't get any rest. So
Yeah.
you don't have any time to step out of the I've got to mark a bunch of stuff, I've got to teach a bunch of stuff, little rodent wheel that you're on,
Mm.
to stop and think about this sort of thing. And I'm pretty sure that many of the discussions that are happening in the pro vice chancellor education space, pro vice chancellor academic space, are going to be about how do we make faster horses, when it should be how do we reimagine education in the age of AI.
Yeah. I absolutely 100% guarantee that's what's happening. And just the way that curriculums are being refactored and being consolidated and sort of productized in a way that makes them more akin or useful for an industrial revolution versus a human consciousness revolution, to me, is insane and a very massive missed opportunity.
Yeah, really good point. Hey, tell me about your book before we finish up.
Yeah, which one? So the one that's behind me is called The Capable Organization.
Yeah.
It's on sale now in all good areas and soon in bookstores. The idea is very simply that organizations, be they universities or large organizations, have lost the ability to do anything themselves in house, and they're slowly bleeding a death of SaaS woe. How do you get off that treadmill? How do you build skills in house? Practical steps, 90-day sprint, all of that's in there. The one that I'm actually one's in with an editor at the moment. That's for teachers explicitly to teach themselves out. It's actually called Teach Yourself Out, and it's around how do you become an entrepreneur with the skills that you have developed as a classroom teacher. And the one that I'm writing now and is going to an editor is my brother's story, so his memoir.
Hmm.
I love writing. It's my favorite. It's the most human thing that you can do as long as you're not using AI to generate the text. It's yeah. I've fallen in love with the art.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Well, we'll make sure that we share links to those once they're all out.
Will do.
And thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this chat. I think we're going to have a couple of others, and we'll definitely get together with David Kellerman
Let's do
and
Dave.
have a
Yeah, that'd
chat.
be fun. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. It's been an absolute blast. I love your work. Can't wait to see you face to face. Talk really soon. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye bye.